Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public hearing for public hearings on rezoning applications on June 25th, 2024. While we do have Zoom links, and there are, I believe, a few people who are watching us that way, there is an error. We are not able to broadcast live. So on our Town of Wolfville site, this unfortunately will not be there, and probably also council. So that's just to let you know. So we'll just go through my public hearing guide. I am the mayor, Wendy Donovan, and this is members of council. I will just introduce them all. They serve as kind of in a semi-judiciary role in public hearing. On my far right is Councillor Madeira Voss. Next to her is Councillor Ingham. Next to Councillor Ingham is Councillor Palmater. Next to me is Deputy Mayor Elliott. We have interim CAO Rob Simons, and then Councillor Butler, and then Councillor McKay and Director Lake. So those are your board. Just to go through the process, we do have two items tonight. They are very similar. Each one will go through a similar process. Staff, so Director Lake, will give a brief summary, and council, this group of people here, may ask questions of staff, clarification only. Then the applicant has, I have up to 15 minutes. If you could be more brief than that, that would be great, but that's what it says. You do have that long. And then again, council has the opportunity to ask you questions of clarification. And then if there's any member of the public, either in person or who might be online, who wishes to comment, they will provide their name and address of residence. And those comments for members of the public are 5 minutes. And after the last speaker of the public has spoken, I will call 3 times if there are any others who wish to speak. And after the last speaker, the applicant is provided a very brief opportunity to comment. You may wish to comment should there be a member of the public making a comment. And as I said, there are two. They are similar in that they are both rezoning applications. And I believe Director Lake is going to probably do a longer, yes, I see a head shake, a longer presentation for the first one because there's many overlaps, and then just a shorter one for the second one. Our job as council is to listen to the public and not to debate or challenge the comments offered by the speaker. We will have an opportunity later in the council meeting that will follow this to make comments should any member of council wish. We may ask, as I mentioned, questions of the speakers to seek clarification. We will not enter into or ask questions of clarification for any member of the public during a public hearing. And only those members of council who are present for the entire public hearing are permitted to vote, which currently is scheduled for later in the evening. And council may defer debate and decision until a later date. That is their prerogative once we get into council. And just very quickly, rules of conduct. Please make all comments. I'm having difficulty tonight. So not members of council who will stay at their desk, but anybody else, staff from the seat where Director Lake is, and anybody from the public or the presenter. There's a mic there. There shall be no applause or expression of emotion during the hearing. No inappropriate language or outbursts or criticisms will be condoned. There may be no signs. I don't see any signs. And debate between council, speakers, and staff are not permitted. So I think that's pretty clear cut. And with that, Director Lake, I will pass it over to you for the first item.
Thank you, Mayor Donovan. And I apologize, my voice is a little bit struggling after the weekend that I had. So I'll do my best with this. It was a wonderful weekend. Yeah, my wife and I host a music festival. Yeah, each year. We're here for the public hearing rezoning application, first for 2 properties on Highland Avenue. And as the mayor indicated, I am going to go through a slightly longer presentation. I'm trying to keep this relatively short, and that's sometimes hard for me. So the purpose here, again, is just for council to receive feedback directly on these applications. The request on this portion of the evening is to rezone 2 properties from medium density residential to high density multi-dwelling unit. The properties combined are 4.35 acres. And you can see them here. So on the east side of Highland, bordering on Highway 101. So I think it's important just to highlight, and I handed out a summary pamphlet as we get into this Housing Accelerator Fund work, and this is very much a part of that work. So the town has received $1.8 million to accelerate housing through to 2027, and this is certainly an important part of that. So some of the work that we're carrying out that's relevant to these files is certainly around public education and moving the level of knowledge in the community around our housing needs to a higher level. But also the main goal of the program is to encourage more housing supply. So that includes appropriately zoning properties. We're also working on a number of other initiatives, and I just thought I would quickly flash these up. So we are in the bottom right working with the university, having some active meetings around a student housing strategy. The pamphlet that's here, if anyone else would like one, it's in the top right, just as a really plain language summary of our program. We do have information online that we're building, and we have had a call out for a non-market housing working group. You can just see an image of that in the bottom left. I think most importantly on this, in the middle of this image, we have had a housing needs assessment prepared for the town. The numbers that are brought forward in that talk about over 800 units needed by 2027 and over 1,700 units needed by 2032. In an era where we're on average only building 25 units per year, this is the sort of essence of the Housing Accelerator program, is to change the way that we're doing things and to move projects forward to provide much needed housing. So there's continuity through these processes, and they do take some time. And I just want to make sure everyone understands what we've sort of gone through as part of both of these files. There will be some repetition here. So there was a public information meeting held, and that includes required notification to neighboring properties. We went through the Planning Advisory Committee, who considered the application and did provide a positive recommendation for council to consider. I came to Committee of the Whole, which is a meeting of all of council, and the application was discussed, a number of issues raised, but moved to first reading, where we prepared a supplemental report that covered some of those issues. And we then held first reading, and we move on to this evening's meeting, which is a public hearing. Before we advertised for that meeting, we also provided some additional information, which was really just the details after multiple discussions on the public benefits that are part of these applications. So I just want to zoom out a little bit, and I have some slides that I always show during a public hearing. So I just want to acknowledge the role, the difficulty that council sits in through these applications and making decisions on development applications. And certainly I hear a lot of different opinions on things, and a lot of them, I always say, are on a spectrum, often polarized. And just acknowledging for everyone that there are a lot of different opinions on development applications. Some of them are very detailed, some of them are really big picture. But some of the bigger tensions that we're wrestling with are obviously a bit more macro in nature. So I just want to highlight this report that we've provided to our planning committee and council, which really outlines, I'm not going to read all that small print there. That would be a great effort, but the summary on the right really says it all, is we really have to change the way we're doing things, not just in municipal government, but all levels of government, to provide more housing and try to work through both the climate and housing crisis as we move ahead. The town has adopted a climate plan as well, so a localized look at some of the actions we should be taking to address climate change locally. This is perhaps a new visual for some people, but I think it's quite powerful. This is from the Nova Scotia Department of Priorities and Planning. And for anyone that's been in the province for any amount of time, I just put an arrow to where 2013-14 is. That's when I relocated back to Nova Scotia, and that's when the Ivany report was really being talked about. But I'll just summarize some of what you're seeing here. So the green is natural change, so births and deaths, and you can see the much healthier sort of positive side of that through the 70s and 80s in our province. The orange is net international migration, so you can see the movement of that through time, and net interprovincial, the blue, you can see these different periods of a lot of people leaving the province, and you can see that trend leading up to the Ivany report, certainly, and during that. But I don't think we certainly that report that I'm referencing here didn't anticipate that's around 100,000 people that you're seeing that have moved to the province very recently. So there's a significant demographic crunch, and housing is obviously really important for that. Another really important tension, I think it's critical to mention, is we often in municipal government deal with plans on the paper, and we go through our planning documents, and we deal with really the front end of a process. And I can tell you from dealing with a lot of projects, that line that I have between plans on paper and shovels in the ground is varied. Sometimes it's really short, and sometimes it's really long and complicated, as a lot of you can attest to from some of the projects. And I just have some examples of some of the current contemporary realities that the construction industry is facing. The province is looking at how we're managing growth. And so this is from the Joint Regional Transportation Authority. And I just want to give you a sense that as a province, we really are wrestling with how to deal with different growth scenarios. And I won't go through this in great detail, but you can see in one scenario here, we have 2 million people living in the province by 2060, and that is the goal of the current provincial government. You can see other scenarios here without as much growth, but it's a really positive exercise that's happening. And I think in the town of Wolfville, we've tried to also plan for growth, put things in place that can accommodate growth over time, and try to be investment ready for this type of project that we're presenting today. So we have started to move forward with a fully funded active transportation network. We have been exploring microtransit, and certainly from my seat, I would really like to have this move forward more meaningfully with the next council and some of the work that is coming out of King's Transit Authority. We've done a lot of work on parking, and we've just started another parking study to inform our plan review that we'll start in the fall. We've been working on a parks master plan. We've been a little bit delayed on that, but I think this is an incredibly important piece of work, particularly as we add new residents. This is really the underpinning from my perspective around really having a high quality of life in the town is trails and parks and areas for people to go and have a third space outside of their home. Servicing is obviously a question that is always asked. Again, I won't read through this slide, but essentially we have had significant funding support for our sewer treatment plant. We've recently secured some other funding for longer term water investment, and we have also been managing our water system and have significant groundwater supply for the short to medium term as well. So that was a real whirlwind, but I'll turn the corner. So when we're dealing with a rezoning application, our primary tool as a municipality to deal with that is through our municipal planning strategy. So we have a comprehensive plan for the town to sort of accept this type of application. So this is what we do to guide our decisions for a rezoning. These applications have been reviewed in detail. I went through the previous meetings where we sort of stepped through all of those different components, but these applications are consistent with our plan. And what's somewhat unique, I guess, and we've talked about this at length, is these applications for rezoning are setting up site plan approval for a particular zone that is very detailed. I could go through the 5 or 10 pages of requirements that the applicants are required to meet if these rezonings are to be approved. So this is just some of the type of requirements, very similar to a development agreement. You can see the summary in the green box. So these are just some of the professional drawings and due diligence. And at the end of the day, cost that comes back to the applicant to move projects forward in town. So this is an image that I've had in the report, and the supplemental information that I've provided through the agreements really is based on this. I'm just showing this one image. But really what we're trying to do is through these rezonings is really look at this whole area and look at some of the public benefit. And when I say public benefit, I mean things off their site that will benefit others as well. So some of the things we've been talking about are sidewalk and trail connectivity. So from both sites that we're talking about today, I'll just say that to the farther left of this slide is the site that I'm referring to right now, which also backs onto Evangeline Park. So we have been able to negotiate a contribution to Evangeline Park, sidewalk, and a gateway signage feature, some landscaping contribution. And I think this particular developer is very interested in providing public benefit and having a very positive impact on the community. So I'll wrap up. This is the process just summarized again. So we started this back in March, and we're here now on June 25th for a public hearing, and council will be able to consider making a decision or providing second reading to these rezonings this evening. Thank you.
Dr. Lake. So we're dealing first with Highland Avenue, and if the developer wishes to make a brief presentation, please come up to the speaker's podium. Staff will help you raise, probably here. Staff will help you raise that. It doesn't need to stay that low. Barbara. She's so good at it, though.
That's good.
If you would just give us your name and your company or your project.
So thank you very much. Very happy to be here. My name is Francisco Wolf. I represent S2E Developments, which is a development group that has been engaged by the owners of 123 Highland Avenue, which are a combination of local and out of province investors, all Canadian. And we have an additional circle of investors that are coming to the project because they look for projects that have a high environmental content in their development. We are not a conventional developer. We come from the energy field, the clean energy field. We have over 20 years of experience developing solar energy projects for various different kinds of applications. And we were, as a company, sort of the mandate of our founders was to generate contributions and make a difference in terms of alleviating the climate change emergency that the whole planet is facing. And our first strategic objective was to bring solar energy to what is called as grid parity, the ability to provide this electricity at a competitive rate compared to other fossil fuel sources of energy. This happened in Canada around 2013. And when we were getting to that point, we sort of started looking at the next strategic target, and we saw that the next biggest contributor of greenhouse gas emissions in Canada was buildings. And so we pivoted from pure energy generation, clean energy generation, to the development of clean buildings and what we call net zero energy buildings, which at the time was more of a technical question or an academic question, how to do that. How can we build buildings that over a 12-month period of time consume as much energy or generate as much energy from clean sources as what they actually need in order to operate. And so that's what we are about as a company. That's where we come from. What we want to do here in this property is a development of about 4 buildings, a total of 240 units if the rezoning application is approved, which is needed in order to achieve the scale that is necessary to support the technologies and the construction methodologies that are needed to make this feasible from an economic perspective. So we will probably build in 2 phases, a first phase of 120 units and a second phase. And the reason for phasing is because you don't want to put all of the units together in the market at the same time, but also because you line up the financing in a more efficient way when you stagger the construction in that sense. If you go to the next slide, this is an example of, this is our flagship project in London, Ontario. Eve Park is a community of 85. We call them stacked townhomes. So these are buildings, but there are not apartments. They're more like the 2-story townhomes that are sort of connected together into this cool-looking buildings. The entire concept behind this community was to build in a way that is net zero and that promotes community and connectivity between the people that live there. This is a for ownership project. It's not for rental, but it is, I think it's a beautiful place that is the first phase, the first 2 buildings, the ones to the left, have just been completed this winter, spring, and they're well into occupancy at this point. Most of the units that were sold have closed on their purchase, and the solar systems are operating in the buildings and are generating electricity as expected. So it's going very well. It's been very well profiled. It's won some international and national awards for innovation in construction technologies. And it is a good, and we're very proud of this project as a representation of what we do as a company. What we want to do in 123 Highlands is a similar type of project that becomes a flagship for us as we move into Nova Scotia, where we see a lot of opportunity because of the fact that a lot of your buildings are still heated with fuel oil. So there is a great deal of, and there's a huge demand for housing. So we think that there is a great deal of opportunity to demonstrate how construction can shift to a more sustainable way. We go to the next. So that's more about Eve Park. The photo on the top right illustrates our smart EV parking towers. This is another innovation that we have in London and Eve Park, and that we also want to explore the possibility of bringing here to 123 Highland. This is a parking carousel that is designed to also charge electric vehicles while they're parked. And the electrification of the parking towers is connected to the clean energy generation systems. So we are looking for innovative ways of introducing that as part of the development in Eve Park, in 123 Highland. If you go to the next. We are in Wolfville because you guys get it. And, you know, we've been talking, we've been in the town for about a year already. The owners of the land have owned this land for longer than that. And they approached us because they understand our vision and they understand this town, and they told us this is a community that understands the importance of sustainability and how you do things. It's all over multiple plans and communication that you have had over the years. I think in our experience, when we try to do innovative projects, often local authorities are lagging behind in their understanding of what it takes to do these things. We've found a very different environment here, and we're very happy so far with the level of collaboration and mutual understanding that the staff at the town have demonstrated in dealing with the various technical questions that arise. We also have strong local partners that are supporting eventually the construction of the project, and so we feel that this is well poised for success. The rezoning, as I mentioned before, this is needed essentially because you need a certain level of scale in order to support the various construction techniques and technologies that are going into this. And if you don't have enough units, you just don't have enough sources of revenue eventually to carry all the engineering and the quality of construction that goes into this. We don't think the 240 units for this site is an excessive number of units. It's a significant increase from what the current zoning allows, but it is a reasonable number of units in terms of density for the size of the site. And as you will see, I think it's my next slide. Well, this is just to illustrate what Director Lake was mentioning. We have discussed and agreed and a number of public contributions that we go with this. Let's go straight to the next because that's easier. So Evangeline Park to the right of the site, we see that as a very important public asset, and we want our development to be integrated with that. And so this is a tentative site plan. We just started our design process this month. We'll go on for another month before we come back to the town with a site plan proposal, but it is looking like something like this. We want to have green space in our site that is connected to the park and that is connected to the bike lanes on Highland and other trails and walkways, so that the people in 123 Highland can also feel that they are on foot or on bicycle well connected to the rest of the town. And of course, in the green space in 123 Highland, this would not be just an open green space. There would be a structured set of amenities for green space. For example, ideas like a dog park, common community gardens, things like that. Also probably connecting to the Evangeline Park. So that's sort of the vision that is emerging for this. We are not sure. I mean, there will be 2 buildings on the first phase and 2 buildings in the second. It could be the 2 on the north on the first phase, or it could be the 2 on the right on the first phase. There is a conversation happening right now, but it would not be all 4 at once. One of the buildings in each phase will likely be higher than the other. And so we're discussing the maximum that the zoning allows. The requested zoning is 6 stories. So we're trying to play with that. We don't want everything to be 6 stories. We want to have sort of a gradient of heights. But the height is a good thing. 6 stories is not too much because it allows first to have more green space by having higher construction. But also this is a higher site close to the highway. So the higher units would have a fantastic view of the town, which we want to play with. And of course, the idea of having public terraces, perhaps on the rooftops, that would be another amenity. It's another idea that is being considered. Again, this is really not the time for the design discussion, but I just wanted to give you a flavor of the ideas that are coming, because I wanted to illustrate how important for us it is that the development is a community building development, and that it connects with what is already going on in the town. So I'm happy to take questions. I think I'm going to leave it at this. We're humbly asking for the approval of the rezoning, and if everything goes according to schedule, we would start construction next spring.
Good. Yes, if you would just stay here. So members of council, either questions to Director Lake or to the developer, Councillor Ingham.
Yeah, I think on the last presentation that you did, I was thinking that you were saying you weren't going up to 6 stories. That's something that's new, because you had said 3 before in the building. So that's something that you've changed on.
So fair point. So we've been looking at how to do this, right? And so there is a trade-off between height and green space. And so as we started the design process properly with the architects, we started to see that if we kept everything at 3 stories or 4, the footprint of the buildings would have to be bigger. And so, I mean, it is possible, but we see that it takes away the kind of green space that we want to have, so that there is this flow of green space that connects or that integrates the project with the park and with the trails. So we think it's a reasonable compromise, I think, to have a couple of buildings perhaps that go higher, and we'll have more detail about how much, because it may not be that all of them. There's some discussion about having a bit of a stepping down, section that it goes up to 5 or 6, then 5, 4, 3, something like that. So the architects need some time to play with ideas. We want to have a building structure that when you look at it from the street, it is pleasant to the eye and that is attractive and is is something that when you drive on the highway, for example, it would also be a striking building or a community complex. So again, no final definitions yet, but it's looking like the trade-off between height and green space favors having some height above the 3 stories.
Deputy Mayor Elliott?
Thank you. I'm wondering about solar. You showed us the London project with the parking and the solar integrated. And I'm just wondering what you're thinking towards that now.
So it's the same concept. We would, I mean, if we go with the rooftop terraces, we're thinking of having a solar canopy over the rooftops, but we also can use side solar on the south and east and west facing sides of the buildings. We've done that in other projects. And we're also considering, again, the architects are playing with this idea, but the need of having some kind of a sound barrier from between the highway and the project, because it is a south-facing side of the property, it might be nicely conducive to a solar wall that is not a very tall wall, but it's a nice element that would also signal the type of development that we have. So we're playing with those concepts. We need to have enough solar panels to reach net zero. And so there's 2 sides to that. One is generation, the other one is on the demand and trying to build buildings that are very efficient in the way they use electricity. So there will be an energy modeling process that supports the final design.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer?
Thank you, Mayor Donovan. I got a question for Director Lake. The water and sewer capacity, you touched on it. Do we have lots of, if all these projects hit us at the same time, meaning the Kenny property, 292 and these 2 properties, are we gonna have enough capacity, both water and sewer for all these? Like these are, they're all contemporary, right?
Yeah, so when we
Contemporaneous.
did both phase 1 and 2 of our sewer treatment plant upgrade, all of this type of growth was modeled.
Yeah.
The water recent funding that we have is more for a long-term solution. We do have a lot of water in the aquifer, but it's talking about redundancy and that longer-term outlook. But I wish Alex was here, but our town engineer has been engaged in these projects, of course.
Thank you. And the other question that I have, this is your first project in Nova Scotia. And you're
Not for our partners, but yes, for us, yes.
but you're gonna be this, you guys are gonna manage it though.
We will manage it, that's correct.
Okay. And these are rentals, not,
This will be rentals.
okay, thank you.
Councillor Madeira Voss?
Hello. I'm just curious of the buildings. There are buildings already there on those properties. What will happen with those?
In 123 Highland. So good question, thank you. We want to preserve that building. This is a 4-plex unit that has tenants right now. And we want to preserve that building until the first building is finished to offer the tenants the possibility to move into the new buildings. Eventually, it will be demolished to be replaced by a modern building.
Councillor McKay?
Thank you. I know we're early stages on design, but are you thinking flat roofs then? So everything would be a flat roof? Probably. I can't visualize what a solar wall looks like. And if you're on the south side, that means the 2 on. Dan, can you put the
Yeah, we
picture
can
back up?
go back to the right.
I'm visual.
So that,
Yeah.
there.
So south is,
Is below the lower
Right.
part, yeah, the highway.
so both 4 would have solar walls on the south side potentially?
Well, so the idea with the solar wall
Yeah.
is separate from the buildings. You see, there's a
Okay.
bit of a blue line going there. So maybe
Yeah.
somewhere around that, yeah, there's like exactly that. It's a separate structure from the buildings.
Ah.
Placement is still, this is a very light
Yeah,
design, right? So we haven't, done all the proper measurements and all of that. But the idea is you have a wall that is not fully vertical, is in a certain angle, and it goes up less than 2 stories. That's enough to have enough capture of sun. So it doesn't interfere too much with the view of the units. It creates a bit of a private space on the green area that would be between the wall and the buildings.
But it's far enough away that it's not in front of windows and those types of things.
Correct,
Okay.
exactly. That's what you don't want, right?
Okay.
You can also have solar panels in the building itself as part of the siding, right? So that's another technical option under consideration, right? So instead of having siding, you have a wall that supports the panel system. And we have that in the London project. We have, there's Eve Park, which is part of a larger community, West 5.
Yeah.
That is all of rentals, and most of those buildings have solar on the walls.
Can you show me what that looks like?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
So these ones are all rooftop solars.
Okay.
Now that I think of it, but I should get you some.
I was just curious what it
photos of
looked like.
that, but it's just the solar panels on the wall are less efficient. They generate less electricity, but they contribute. So at the end of the day, it's a matter of adding up.
My second question is on the parking.
Mhm.
So in between, if we go back, Devin, sorry. We keep taking you
Mhm.
on the podium UG parking. So I'm assuming that's what you mean by those.
So there would be a combination of parking solutions. There would be underground parking.
Yeah.
For under all of the buildings. There would be the parking towers. And so we're exploring, still nothing definitive with possible locations for the parking towers, but between connecting the two buildings on the two southern buildings, it would be closer to the highway, possibly having some parking towers there. And on the northern side, it would be on the northern end, some parking towers sort of facing the entrance of the, so you would drive in, you would have a ramp going underground, but you would also have a waiting area for the parking towers right there. So there would be 2 or 3, maybe 4 on each side parking. So we would achieve the majority of the required parking with a combination of underground parking and the parking towers. That would minimize surface parking. We would have still some surface parking for various good reasons, but it would be minimum.
Can you flip back to the picture, Devin? Sorry. So under the parking one, the towers.
Yes.
Yeah. So how tall are those?
So those are about 4 stories tall. And just to be super clear, this is an unfinished parking tower.
Okay.
It was taken during construction. Normally, the parking tower will have an enclosure, and the enclosure can be a combination of solar panels. In the case of Eve Park, on the front facing side of the tower, there would be a green wall, sort of covering the whole of the tower. So vegetation.
And how much, so are those lights on all of the time?
No, that was done for the photo.
Just, okay.
The tower doesn't need internal lighting, right?
It's because it's just like an elevator for cars?
Exactly. You need lights at the loading area, which is a ground level. You might have some aesthetic lights in the rooftop but it would be a soft light. Yeah.
How do those work in snow?
They work very well.
Really?
Yeah. They're covered, they're protected from the snow, but there's nothing, I mean, everything is waterproof. And yeah, they work fine.
Thanks.
London gets a lot of snow. London, Ontario.
Grew up in London. I don't remember a lot of snow.
Maybe not Nova Scotians.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
about that, yes.
So relative. Councillor Butler.
I just have a question sort of to follow up on the parking towers. I'm on your website. So I see one enclosed smart parking that looks like a warehouse, but these are actually going to match the buildings. Like if they're attached to the buildings, it's going to have the same facade as the buildings, so it'll blend
They
in.
do in London. They
Okay.
don't have to, right? This is entirely up to architects, right?
Okay.
It could be made to stand out as a distinctive element, or it could be made to blend, right?
Okay, now maybe it's just because it's the only photo on the website, but it looks like it only accommodates a certain type of vehicle.
Right, so we have 2 types of towers.
Okay.
Towers for SUVs and towers for sedans.
Okay.
So the same height, but a lesser number of units. So on an SUV tower, you get 12 SUVs in the tower. In a sedan tower, you get 14.
Okay. All right, that was my clarification. Thank you.
Councillor McKay.
Thanks. I forgot to ask one. What is do you have things with water output and usage. You're green, but in terms of water usage, do you have put everything in low flow toilets? Like what is your water
So,
conservation?
Right, so we would normally design for the top tier of water efficiency in all the internal appliances and various uses. We have not done that calculation for this because we're still waiting for confirmation on the number of units, and the size of units will be a big part of the discussion. So how many bathrooms we'll have in each unit is a consideration. Also, when we look at the gardens or the green area, there will be a conversation. We had this done in London. We'll need to have it for here about, we want to have low maintenance gardens in terms of watering. So for that, we work with local vegetation. So there would be a landscape architect that has local expertise that would participate in that process. So these are questions that are coming, and they would be part of what we would present to the town for approval for site plan and for building permits.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I wonder if we have anybody in the room who would like to make a public comment? Is there anyone online, Laura, that you know of? David? We have someone in the room. Please come up, just give your name and make your comment, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Dan. I live at 31 Bigelow Street, and I think it's a pretty cool project, and I was looking at Eve Park. They've got some really interesting giveaways with their purchases. I think you get like a Tesla if you buy a unit there.
Wow.
But I was looking at some of the affordability, and I was wondering about the affordability of this project. And so I think Eve Park for a 2-bedroom starts at 700,000, goes up to 950,000, and 3-bedroom starts at 1.2 million. And I'm just wondering if, the rentals are kind of high as well, if that's going to be a similar kind of demographic that they're going to be targeting with this.
This is not a question and answer, but certainly that's a question that Director Lake can follow up with you
Okay.
if you give him your contact information. Thank you
Okay,
very
thank you.
much. Is there anybody else who wishes to make a public comment? Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment on this rezoning application? And I will ask a third time, is there anyone else who wishes to make public comment on this zoning application? Hearing not, Director Lake, we can go to the second public hearing, Gaspereau Avenue, and do you have a brief presentation on that?
I do, thank you. It'll be very brief. Where are we here? This one. Laura, are we, yeah, do.
Is this the one you want to share?
Yep. Thank you. So this is very similar. I'm just I think it's important to go through this for the public record. So this is the second public hearing talking about properties on Gaspereau Avenue. So again, the purpose of the public hearing, and I'll just get into this actual application. So it is just it was formerly multiple properties and it has been consolidated. So you can see the 4.6 acre parcel in red. So it is to the west of Gaspereau, again bordered by Highway 101. There is some higher density buildings here along Riverview, and obviously I'm sure people are familiar with the type of built form that's here along Pleasant. Certainly some single family homes and semi-detached, and then a newer project to the east. I have some of this information and I won't say the same thing twice. So I'll skip over this. Again, just talking about continuity through a process and our planning documents. Again, there was significant discussion through this process around public benefit. The nature of this site, the opportunities on this site are slightly different. There is an old road reserve That certainly isn't the most welcoming entrance into the town of Wolfville. So a big part of this has been talking about doing streetscaping, sidewalk connection down to Pleasant, along with the signage and trails along Highway 101 connecting over to Reservoir Park and Evangeline Park. So I'll wrap up. This is just, again, the process I went through for the first application, and these have run concurrently. So the dates are also the same. And we can move into the developer.
Any questions of Director Lake before we get to the proponent, Deputy Mayor Elliott?
Thank you. It looks to me on the east side of Gaspereau, where Travis's development is, that there's green space there. What exactly is the green colored running the length of the street?
This is the former Gaspereau Avenue. And so we have looked at this for a number of years. Right now it's, for lack of a better term, it's a bit of a dog's breakfast of driveways and complete open space. So we would retain ownership. It's a really wide right of way, essentially, that we haven't really, frankly, we haven't really invested in it. So this is a good opportunity. This is an entrance into the town. This is an aerial photograph, and you can see it's significant space. We have talked in the past about using this as part of some of the frontage that's there existing. We have had recent surveys. We've looked at services there. We've had some camera work done. So there's been quite a bit of diligence over the years as Mr. Mills was going through his project and just interacting through that process with some of the other landowners. And so yeah, this is a great opportunity to really improve the street there.
So it's about the streetscape as much as anything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Palmer?
How wide is that, Devin? Like feet, like roughly?
I don't want to give you the wrong number, but I want to say it's 40 or 50 feet. Peter, do you know offhand? Closer to 60, yeah. No.
Councillor Madeira Voss?
So I just need to clarify that what we're looking at right now with that strip across from the property that is going to be developed. This is a contribution that's being made as I guess to the community. Is that what because I know when we did the East End, when we talked about the height, a lot of the discussion focused on we're going higher so we can go greener. And there was more land given over for trails. So we have more trails now in the East End than we had before, because that was the exchange that went on with that developer. This is what we're looking at here, is that in exchange for the rezoning, if you like, that will allow for that increased height, we're looking at the developer taking on the responsibility for beautifying that area. Are there any other parcels that are going to be treated that way? Or are we looking at just that spot?
So both projects have, you've said that beautifully. That was a great summary. And so yes, that is exactly what we're doing. And it certainly has been informed by the East End project. So that is the primary contribution for this, but there's also, we're talking to the provincial government about actually having slightly more formalized trails along the highway, so that we can both have a little bit more of a loop connection for residents around here. I know people really tell me that they love walking in loops. Yeah. But there's also green space on the site as well as there's required amenity space on the site as well. So there will be some green space there. And the previous presenter did speak to that a little bit, that trade-off. But yeah, this is it will be a significant public contribution in a project within our right of way, within the town right of way.
I will invite the developers, Mr. Napier, Mr. Polly, one of you or both of you, to come up and whomever. And if you would like, you have an opportunity to make a presentation as well. Mr. Polly.
I could probably go faster if I can control the forward myself.
Are we okay? Yeah, sure.
Turn your mic on.
Thank you for the council to be open to a proposal like this. Got a bit of a presentation here. I know we've been through a fairly long presentation 3 times. So I was trying to abbreviate this just so it wasn't getting to the point of being downright annoying. So most of the people in the town know us from our work at Woodman's Grove, being the original 40-acre parcel there with the single family home and then the 6 apartment buildings that we've constructed over the last 10 to 12 years. Got about 290 units in 6 buildings there. Just finishing the 6th building. This is a 72 unit building. It's in 2 different affordable housing programs. One is a CMHC program and the other is a Housing Nova Scotia program. Will be net zero construction and 100% EV coverage. About 400 to 450 kilowatts of solar PV on the roof. It is a massive roof. It's about the size of a football field all together. So it will be a significant energy generator above and beyond being net zero. And through the new commercial net metering program, it will actually help us make a dent in the electrical needs for the rest of the project. A lot of people here have been up to the buildings to know the units are very nice. I tell people they're actually nicer than my own house. Very nice outdoor spaces. The community gardens have just been a runaway success. Gives me great pride to be able to see our residents out there, residents of all ages, enjoying them. The next thing that we want to do on site is we have a little fleet of electric trikes on order. We're going to miss most of this summer season, but they should be here for this fall, and we'll have them for nice and early next year. So these are all electric. Goes back to my mother always wanting an electric, not an electric trike, but a trike many years ago. The site, Director Lake spoke to it. Our goal is basically to provide relatively affordable housing for the town. The future will unfold with the federal government in terms of what at some point the new probably federal government will want to do for these programs. So we'll have to see what happens there. It's a high visibility site, so we want to come up with something that's architecturally quite pleasing and makes a significant contribution to the town's housing supply. This is what I have now dubbed the official title, Preliminary Simplistic Site Plan. Just meant to show kind of the square boxes on the project, but anybody that's been in through Woodman's Grove knows that the buildings have considerable amount of detailing and articulation to them. Project would be all concrete and steel construction, so very high quality, institutional grade. This is, I would call it European type construction. Like we're building this building 100 years from now, 200 years from now, this building should still be standing there. Significant commitment to making all of our projects going forward net zero. So the roofs will be loaded with solar panels. We need to work through the design. I have a preference for a sloped roof, just because I think we can get more articulation on it. And I've got a bit of a concept for something that could make it a bit of a landmark along the highway. And that ties in well to the creating space for the solar PV panels. We want to have lots of great common area spaces for our residents, both on site, and this ties in well to what Director Lake was referencing for the strip of land on the other side of the street. We're looking to make that an amenity for residents of the town and for our residents on this project. We're envisioning a small kind of backdoor driveway running out to Borden Avenue and Riverview Drive. This is actually the rails to trails just this side of Kentville, but just something like this, just a modest little driveway going out the back way. Concept that we've landed on is subject to transportation and what they call it. They keep changing their name, TIR highways. Subject to their approval, we've committed to building a 2-kilometer trail along the highway running all the way from Maple Street to Highland. And we would take that on ourselves to make sure that it happens in a realistic time frame. We would actually hope to do that over the next year in basically one swoop. Wanted to touch on subject of construction economics, just because I know the town, this whole discussion is radically different than past discussions, I think, that have occurred in the town over the last 10, 20 years. I know when we initially came in with our Woodman's Grove project 15 years ago now, people thought that was a massive project. The world continues to unfold, whether it's for the better or worse. Time will tell. But the project economics have changed considerably over the last 10 to 15 years. So this Royal Bank came out with a study in the last few months, and they're saying that Canadian residential construction prices are up by 50% since the pandemic began. Our experience, and we are very hands-on. We've got hourly guys on site. We're landing stuff there literally by the truckload, factory direct, China factory direct. Like we have literally 2 or 3 containers a month coming directly from factories in China to feed the machine projects here and in Halifax. Costs are crazy. We're basically looking at double the cost now from when we first started at Woodman's Grove. We bumped the rents up some, but they're not double. And I'll come to the interest rates here in a minute, but just looking at just some of the baseline materials. So this lovely chart shows what's happened with copper. So everything electrical is largely driven by the price of world copper. So we're basically twice what it was over the course of the first 5 buildings that we built in Wolfville Woodman Road. So price of lumber, everybody talks about how crazy it went during COVID when 2x4s were $14. So we're lucky now. It's back down. It's only twice as much now as it was when we first started working at Woodman's Grove. But it's crazy. I call this the real world in Wolfville, just basic costs, drywall labor. First couple of buildings there, we were paying about 50 cents a square foot to get the hanging and taping done. Today, the going rate is $1.50 if you can get guys to work. So that's triple. Drywall sheets. When I first started at this, 20 years ago, we were paying about 30 cents a square foot. It dropped to about 24, 25 cents a square foot. Now it's 60 cents a square foot. Wire mesh, same thing. It actually went down and now it's back. It's way more than double what it was 20 years ago. Over the last 20 years, with the constant inflation in construction costs, it's largely been offset by interest rates crawling downward. That came to an abrupt halt about 2 years ago when rates went crazy. And even looking at the Royal Bank forecast earlier today, I mean, they're still talking about 10-year bond rates at being over 3%. So that's still relatively high for the foreseeable future. So we are talking about constructing some fairly large projects here. So just so you understand why. So this is just a simplistic little schedule that I made just so you can better understand the economics on these buildings. So when you're going to build one of these buildings, whether you're building a building that's 36 units or 48 units or 64 units, a lot of the costs are fixed. To excavate the site, you land the crew there, you need to put the driveway in, you need to bring the sewer and water in, you need to bring all of the hassle dealing with Nova Scotia Power, bringing the power lines in, everything. A very large portion of that is fixed. So your excavation, sewer and water, electrical connection, even your roof over top of you is large. It varies a bit depending on the size and the height. The electrical distribution, building out the boiler room, the design and engineering doesn't cost that much more to design a 100-unit building compared to a 48-unit building or a 36-unit building. Project management, you've got one super on site, whether you're building a 70-unit building or 36-unit building, you need to pay him the same pricing. The marketing, the financial soft costs, a lot of this, there are fixed costs or they don't increase that much as the building grows in scale. So hopefully this will just help you understand, not just on this project, but just in general, some of the challenges that we face and that you will see other people coming forward in the future. Over time in Halifax, typical new building has grown from 36 units to 48 to 60 to 96 to 120. Some new buildings today are 200 units because of the economies of scale in building them. This simplistic little example, I was just trying to show what these fixed costs work out to on a per unit basis. They increase a bit with the scale of the building, but not a lot. So you do the numerator over denominator and call it fixed costs per building can drop from say $55,000 per suite to $27,000 per suite. That's a $28,000 change. Typically that would be more than we would actually make building the building. Now in this business, there's not many people build these buildings and turn around and sell them and flip them. You build it, hopefully it's worth a little bit more than the sum of your costs, but this differential there, that $27,000, that would typically be more than the created value that we've been able to achieve. So by building the bigger building, it lets us get our costs per unit down, which makes the project feasible, helps us get it out of the ground. And in a competitive market situation, we need to bring units to market at a reasonable rate in order to be able to lease them. So I think that's it. Oh, this quite a good article here. If anybody has the time to read through it, it's from Harvard, and they're just talking about if you want to have more affordable housing, you need to actually understand what's going into the cost of building them. It's quite enlightening that you might want to take the time to browse through at some point in time.
Okay, thank you.
And that's it.
Questions of council to the developer? Councillor Palmer.
Thank you very much. What kind of timeline do you think you're looking at for so I guess first question, how many structures do you think will be on your property?
The site plan shows 3.
And in what kind of timeline you think you're looking at there?
We want to start the first one this fall. Like we're going to be finished the building at Woodman's Grove. We've been hunting through the valley to find another site. We've missed out on several, or they've been delayed. So we have guys that need work, and we want to move them right over here to get underway with the first building, basically ASAP.
Thank you.
Are you good?
Yep.
You're right.
Oh, sorry.
Counselor McKay?
Thank you. Mr. Hall, did you plan on building something similar to what was in it that you've built previously down in Woodman's Grove and similar height?
Woodman's Grove is 3 stories plus 1 floor of underground parking. Here, I think my preference is 5 stories. Because I believe, and this is subject to Mr. Napier, our architect, working through it with us, but I think with the height limit that's in place at 5 stories, we can do a sloped roof. At 6 stories, with the height, you would need to go to a flat roof. And I think that my preference is for a sloped roof structure so that we can load more solar panels on it. And I think we can actually get a bit more architectural flair to it with some creative treatment off the roof line.
And there'll be underground parking again?
Yes, yeah. Be 1 level of underground parking everywhere. There'd be some podium spaces between the buildings to be able to pick up some more, and depending on the exact relationship of the unit mix to the to what we can get on 1 floor, there might even be some areas where we are into 2 floors of underground parking.
Counselor Madeira Voss?
So just to clarify on that, when you say 5 stories, these are above ground. The
Yes.
5 does not include
Sure.
the stories underground.
Correct, but with call it the topography on the site, we would envision that the underground parking would be virtually all underground. And we are somewhat forced to do that, I think, in order to work with the way that the height is calculated with the zone.
But if you're doing slanted, I don't know, this is probably a premature question, but if you're doing slanted, you'd want a different height, say at the front and the back.
I'm
Oh.
sorry, I don't understand.
Well, could it be that the back part of the building is slightly higher rather than a box that you would have? Is it on a slope? Is that the?
No, the piece of land is actually relatively flat. There now. But the building would be at a consistent level, but then the roof would be kind of sloped.
Okay.
Kind of like a bungalow with flair, call
Okay.
it on the.
I
on the
was
roof
just
line.
envisioning when the angle, I was envisioning a sort of a step back where, we've talked about other buildings not being a rectangular that,
Yeah,
there'd be say 5 stories at the back and
Okay.
4 stories at the front or something like that to allow for the slope.
And there is a requirement for that in the zone for the portions that abut the street. And so it would need to comply with the underlying land use criteria. Yes,
Your light's not on
and
this
that can be achieved, I think, a bunch of different ways, whether the building steps back or there's different elements to it to give that perception that there is a setback or a step back.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Butler?
I was just trying to, I think it was in a report previously, but I just can't find it in the current one. How many units total with the 3 buildings?
As many as we can.
Can you be more specific?
Yes, the max is 120 per building. So
Per building.
Yeah. So times 3, that would be 360.
So at the moment, Woodman's Grove has 6 buildings at 3 stories for 290 units total.
Correct.
And you're doing 3 buildings at 5 stories at 360 units total.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and the Woodman site, they're roughly the same size. The Woodman site would be a little bit bigger, but it does lose a bit of land with the street running through. So they're both roughly 4.5 acres.
Okay.
But there's a lot of call it open space between the buildings at the Woodman's Grove site. So we can achieve a higher density on this site by going higher.
Thank you.
Counselor Palmer?
Thank you. But the footprint is essentially the same or similar to what the Woodman's
Yeah.
Grove is, the
The-
footprint.
The footprints that were shown on the site plan here. Just bring it back here. The biggest footprint here, the one on the left, would be similar to the size of the footprints of the third, fourth, and fifth buildings that we built at Woodman's Grove. So they are about 20,000 square feet. And the other two footprints are about the same size as the first two buildings that we built at Woodman Road, which would be the gray one and the yellow one. And the footprints of those are about 16,000 square feet.
Deputy Mayor Elliott?
Thank you. I was quite entranced at one of your previous presentations when you were speaking about the old growth trees
Yeah.
and
Question.
yeah,
Okay.
and
making
the chunk that shows as green space, will that preserve those trees? Is that your thinking
Yeah.
at this stage?
Yes, I don't have that plan here. Michael Napier has done a rough GPS locate on some of the prime or prize specimens there. So the biggest one is well back into the middle of this. And there's one there that's literally about 4 feet in diameter. Like it's spectacular. So we would want to keep as many of those as we can and just go in. And I mean, it's just grown wild there, I think, for years, but it could be spectacular. Have that cleaned up, a couple swings hanging there. The branches on some of these trees are probably 2 feet in diameter all by themselves. So there's another big specimen like this on Oak Street, just where the bridge goes across the ravine at the end of Woodman Road. It's the same sort of size or scale of an oak tree.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're right on the tail end of where the bigger footprint is here. There's a couple that would need to come down that aren't as big, but a bunch of them are closer close to the back of the site there. Yeah, so we would want to keep as many of them as we can.
Other questions from members of council? Counselor Palmer?
In TIR is if and when they ever twin the 101, it's to the south side. Correct?
And to answer a question that Councillor McKay asked earlier, I can bore people to death talking about water consumption. But the fixtures we use are typically 3.7 liter per minute, which I don't even think you can buy at retail. They're special order taps and aerators, and we put other special balancing valves in. Our water consumption at the Woodman's Grove building, like we have graphs going back since the first day that people moved in. We watch the water like a hawk because it's a significant water, it's a significant expense. So we track about 120 liters per person per day across the board there. So if you said the average unit at Woodman's Grove has 2 people in it, so that's about 60 liters per person per day. The normal design standard is, I believe, 350 liters per person per day. So we're between a quarter and a sixth of, call it, the normal new design standard. So we view it as a challenge to pound the water consumption down as low as we can, which is good for the town because it will help stretch out your sewage and water resources to facilitate more more growth, even if other people don't have this quirky interest in it, we do. So it'll help save the space for others.
Thank you. I wonder if we have any members of the public who wish to speak, and I'll ask again, Laura, is there anybody online? No, none online. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? And a third time, is there any member of the public who wishes to speak? Hearing none, and therefore I don't see any reason, but I will put it out there for clarification of staff or the developer to the non-speaker. So, all right. So I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you. This will be dealt with
Thank
at
you.
council, and council, we have about a 5-minute break. Apparently there's a changeover with technology happening. So take a 5-minute break and then we will start with council.